Hello and welcome back to this week's Pop Culture Powerhouse. We have got the brains and the other brains. The Doctor versus Rick Sanchez. Portal travel versus time travel. Yeah, this is a wacky one of my. It's a wacky one of my own devices.
I'd love
We've
that
got,
crossover.
Yes, we've got 6 characteristics as always.
We do.
We have got iconicness, individuality, quality of adaptations, legacy, relatability, and personal preference. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Iconicness is really difficult, and as always, we need to be aware of our nationality bias here.
Yes, we do. We do.
Because without a doubt, Doctor Who is one of the most iconic British shows of all time.
Yeah.
Um,
Up there with the soaps.
Yeah, and it's definitely made its way out of the UK. We know that for sure.
We do.
But it's really difficult to tell quite how global it is.
Yeah, I feel like we're aware that it's made it to America.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like huge in America, but it's there and there are fans of it. I imagine it's probably pretty popular in Australia because there's plenty of Brits there. But like Europe and stuff, it's hard to know if it's really like ventured much into those places. I imagine it has, but maybe not to a high level, if that makes sense. Which
Yeah, it's really difficult to tell. So back in 2011, Doctor Who was the BBC's biggest show they could sell outside of the UK.
Okay.
So like selling it to other countries, that was the one that was making them the most money.
Okay.
For a long time, I believe Top Gear held that.
I was gonna say,
and around 2011 is when I think it started to.
Is that when it all ended?
I think so. But bearing in mind the BBC does make a lot. You know what? I'm not even going to bother getting in. It makes a lot of good, genuine TV shows.
Yeah.
If you're outside the UK, there's a lot of drama around the BBC and people's feelings on it. But it does make good TV shows. A lot of good British talented actors get their start on a BBC show,
True.
especially Doctor
Who. Yeah, true. Very true.
So,
I mean, the Doctor himself is also quite an iconic character.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that Doctor Who is worldwide, but it's probably not insanely large worldwide. I'd say anywhere in the English-speaking world where English is like a very common language, you're going to find someone who knows the show pretty easily. I think when you're going to more Asia and stuff is where you might struggle a bit more, would be my guess.
Potentially. But they do like the Western like franchises and stuff.
They do. Especially sci-fi franchises. So I can see it having a good cult following over there, but it might not be public knowledge.
Rick Sanchez is, I feel, in the world of the internet, is global. Like,
raced to superstardom.
Yeah. But has somewhat died off a little, I feel. Or at least the controversy and stuff didn't help. It sort of plateaued around all that.
I think Rick and Morty, despite being a show that I will continue to watch as long as they make it in the same vein as a Family Guy, is definitely not as popular as it once was. And there's a big, obvious reason for that. I don't think the writing's got worse, per se. I think that when you attract that kind of audience, they grow out of it very quickly.
Yes.
Family Guy is the one exception to that rule. Just because it was making 80s references to 14-year-olds in the 2000s. So when you're making them same 80s references to 24-year-olds in the 2020s, they're kind of like, yeah, it's fine because the show hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't making jokes that you're supposed to understand in a childish way. It was making jokes that are just references. Whereas Rick and Morty's a bit more pop culture related. So when you grow out of that pop culture, it takes a little bit of the shine off of it. But it's also come about in a social media age where, as we've discussed many times, if anything gets too popular, you get a 180 flip on it where everyone then has to hate it. And I think that's actually Rick and Morty's biggest problem. It got too popular, so everyone was like, "Oh no, it's not cool to like Rick and Morty anymore."
Yeah, it kind of, and I think to your point of like, their humor is very much for a certain sort of age range, and you start growing past that, and it's like I can go back and yeah, sure, like I'm not gonna not enjoy Rick and Morty, but I'm not gonna go back and be like, oh my god, I need to watch like every episode of the season back to back. I mean, this is so funny, I'm hooked.
Yeah,
it's more like, yeah, it's Rick and Morty. It's like it is what it is.
I remember when season 6 came out, I watched it. I was like, "Oh, this doesn't feel very good." I was like, "I'm gonna go back and watch the older series, the good stuff." And as I was watching, I was like, "Oh no, it's actually really similar. I've just changed a little bit, which isn't a problem."
Do you know
But
what?
I think that actually made me find it easier to enjoy. Because I was like, you know what, I've just changed a little bit. This show isn't as funny to me anymore. I still like it though. It's still an easy watch. It'll still get the odd chuckle out of me. That's good enough.
It's similar to like, I don't know if you ever watched the ASDF movies on YouTube.
No, I didn't.
They were like a little animated little comedy, like very quick jokes. It was all animated, hilarious. But I go back now and watch, and I'm like, yeah, these are funny, but they're not nearly as funny as they used to be. And I'm realizing I'm just not. I've grown out of that humor range. It is a like, there is a age range that humor is trying to hit, and you start growing out of it. And I mean, it's bad. It's just the audience is very limited.
So. And I think people need to be more aware that when they grow out of the target audience, I think that's a big problem Star Wars is having. A lot of Star Wars fans don't realize they're growing out of the target audience, and that causes some of the problems.
Yeah.
Individuality.
I mean, the Doctor is the Doctor. Like, there is no one massively like him.
Yeah, I feel like, ironically, we're going to go to something I said before here. The only character I could see being a bit of an inspiration for the Doctor is Sherlock Holmes. But there's definitely a very unique, separate twist there, and it might just be more a product of the time rather than inspired by. And over the very long history of the Doctor, it's definitely moved away from that a lot now.
Well, yeah, and also it's like the Doctor, it almost adds to its individuality that each Doctor has their own
style and
vibe. Yeah, and it's like that just adds more layers to how individual the character of the Doctor is.
Absolutely.
Rick Sanchez is Doc from Back to the Future.
He is
but drunk.
He's Doc from Back to the Future mixed with a little bit of the Doctor, mixed with a little bit of every arsehole that's ever been in a comedy series. And this isn't in a bad way. It's just that's the point of the character. He's supposed to be this character that you hate that you find funny.
Yeah. I just see him as he is a drunk version of Doc from Back to the Future, because Morty is like Marty McFly, like he's the one that gets dragged into these things, and they're just wilder, more like crazy experiments and shit in Rick and Morty.
It's once again, he has kind of developed away from this like personality he was given. Or that was inspired by is the better way to say it, because they've not ripped anyone off here. They have built a character out, but then as you build that character out of like, this is a bit what I want the vibe to be, once you start doing more stories with them, they start to build their own personality that you can see and make sense of. I mean, he's definitely got there now, but I'd say there's more clear inspiration for Rick than the Doctor.
Yeah.
Quality of adaptations. Now, this is very complex. Doctor Who lore is incredibly complex because of the nature of Doctor Who. So, we have got 3 time periods of the TV. We have got original. We've got what's known as New Who, which to some people is everything past 2005.
Okay.
But on BBC iPlayer, you have 2005 to 2022, and then you have the new start that's just
Got
started
you.
in another time era.
Got you.
But then you've also got books and comics.
Mm-hmm.
And audiobooks and radio only stories, because you've got to remember this show started in the 60s.
Yeah. Right.
And are we splitting them up based on that, or are we splitting them up based on people who've played the Doctor? And each interpretation from an actor of the Doctor.
See, that's the thing. It's like, obviously, I think you have those splits you said, but it's like you could also have it go down to like each Doctor is another take on the Doctor and an adaptation, but at the same time, that is just too. It gets complex a bit.
Yeah, I'm happy to cut this quality of adaptations any direction you want and go from there.
I don't think we do individual Doctors.
Okay.
Because I think that is just part of what Doctor Who is.
Okay.
So then, yeah, it's between. I'm happy to do the eras and then obviously
Books
you've got
and
the
radio.
books and radio and all that.
Okay. So saying that the original era is the original base, you can't really talk about the quality of that too much. It's very much a product of its time. Bits of it have aged horrifically, but they are actually addressing that in a very mature way, which is not easily done anymore. There was lots of racial stereotypes back when the show was being made in the 60s. I'm not sure we can be particularly surprised at that.
Yeah, I mean,
the American film that got made in the 80s has become a bit of a cult classic. It's a bad film, but it's got staying power, which is crazy.
Can't be as bad as the Star Wars Christmas.
No, it isn't, fortunately. Then it came back in 2005 and captured the mind of a 6-year-old Connor. I am never ever going to say a bad word about Doctor Who. I'm not.
Fair.
Yeah, there are weaker stories. Yes, I think that Jodie Whittaker got saddled with some bad stories. What I can tell you for free right now, I'm never ever going to say any actor who played the Doctor did a bad job. Every actor who ever played the Doctor, I have loved something about their performance. Even in the voice acting, even in the books. Do I have them in here? No, they're in the other room. I've got some of the Doctor Who books. They're really fun. They're so much fun. And they did pick your own adventure books.
That's cool.
That were fucking awesome, like you were the Doctor's companion. How much fun's that?
Yeah, I have to say, like, obviously each Doctor kind of has their audience, so I don't think you can kind of take it away from. From what I've seen, because I've not watched really much since David Tennant, and it's like none of them seem like they did a bad job. And it's like it's just what era of Doctor did you have? It's all the adaptations seem good.
My favourite part about kind of becoming an adult, not like for a sense of like brain developing and maturing, was going back and watching Doctor Who and being able to enjoy Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi so much because I wasn't a child who just missed David Tennant anymore.
Yeah, I get that.
I got to watch them with like fresh eyes and be like, oh no, they did a really good job. I love these guys so much. We really got Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, Matt Smith, and Peter Capaldi back to fucking back. It was, you couldn't put a run together like that if you dreamt of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was all solid choices.
So yeah, quality of adaptations I'd say for the Doctor are, there's quite a range of stuff. There's definitely some really bad stuff. I know some of the like radio stories were quite weak.
Yeah, but
I'd still say overall, over this amount of time that you've had to put like so many different variations of stories out, I'd say it's impressive how consistent it is.
Yeah. Rick and Morty hasn't really had. I mean,
they've got an anime coming.
They do, and I think they might have some comics of sorts now.
They do have some comics.
I don't know if you would class the games by the same studio.
They're not set in that universe. It's just Justin Roiland's voice. He for a voice actor, he doesn't have a lot of range.
Yeah, I know. It's just whether you include them, because obviously they got popular because.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure the comics are fine. I'm not
I have no information on the comics. The anime looks dog shit.
The anime
It
looks
does.
a bit wacky.
It's a horrible art style, and it just looks like the same kind of Rick and Morty idea, but almost in a very offensive anime caricature way, which I'm just not sure I like.
The tough thing is like that art style can be fine for some animes. I think the problem they've got is with Rick and Morty already being an animated show, they've really tried to branch themselves away from that with the art style. Like they've tried to really make sure it feels like something different, which like isn't going to be for everyone's taste and might not land when it comes out.
But I do believe so far all we've got is the animated show and the comics.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the comics.
I imagine they're pretty basic. They can't be that bad. It'll just be like, oh, Rick does this thing. Rick goes to this.
As a general rule, when we don't have a lot to go on, we say that person kind of has to lose the quality of adaptation just because they haven't proved they can do it in different mediums with different people involved.
Oh yeah, like Doctor Who's got such a range and been around longer. So
Legacy is the biggest stomping ground ever.
Oh yeah.
How many shows that started in the 60s in just a tiny little island of Britain are still going today, getting bigger, and you've got Disney Plus offering to give the BBC money so that they can stream it in America.
It's
like different levels.
Oh yeah, like just purely the age of the show, like the legacy that's created. And you could also look at the legacy of like all the actors and actresses that it's like put out into the world that got their step off from that show.
Do you want to know some of my favourite people who got their start in Doctor Who or got a big like role or like sorry, they had like a little cameo in Doctor Who and then they've gone on to be superstars.
Go on.
Olivia Colman. She was in Matt Smith's very first episode.
There we go.
Karen Gilligan, obviously. Matt Smith, David Tennant, obviously. Andrew Garfield.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
The actor who's got like the ultimate baby face and has looked young forever. He was in Love Actually as the little boy. You know the little boy in Love Actually, like Liam Neeson's stepson. I'm not expecting you to know the actor's name.
Oh yeah.
He's been in Doctor Who.
Oh okay.
I'm convinced if you want to make it as an actor, you need to have been on Doctor Who at some point. Daniel Kaluuya on Doctor Who. Just if you've not done a BBC show and more specifically Doctor Who, you're probably not making it in the acting industry. That would honestly, if I was to decide to start acting and I booked even a 30-second role on Doctor Who, I would be convinced that I was going to make it because of the amount of superstar actors who had nothing roles in that show.
Yeah, no, it's like that as a legacy alone is huge. I mean, Rick and Morty hasn't really got a legacy other than everyone likes to try and do the voice or meme it. Pickle Rick might be the biggest legacy it's got.
What I will say is though, it has had an incredible pop culture legacy and impact.
Yeah, for a short stay so far.
For how long it's been around, it's so deeply ingrained. Like in 20 years' time, when it's probably tapered off, because I don't think it has staying power. People are going to be looking back at memes from the mid 2000s and 10s, like late 2000s and 10s. And they were like, why is everyone talking about fucking Szechuan sauce and Pickle Ricks?
Do you know
what were they smoking?
You know how we get like shown like an intro for a show from our childhood that we completely forgot? We're like, oh my God, I forgot about that show. That's going to happen with kids that have watched Rick and Morty, and then us older as well. But like, oh my God, that was that thing that kind of blew up on the internet for ages. Everyone was like, I'm Pickle Rick for like 2 years straight, and then I completely forgot that existed.
If nothing else, the legacy of Rick and Morty and Rick Sanchez in my heart is going to be a wow for a short stint there. That was the most fun thing I could find to watch, and it was. Whether I've grown out of it or not, it's always going to hold a special place in my heart.
Oh, yeah.
Relatability. Once again, I don't think I particularly relate to either of these people, but I definitely relate more to the Doctor, and I always in the least weird way possible. Like I always try and like forget what would Jesus do, what would the Doctor do. He is like he's designed to be this kind of moral beacon of like try and do
I
this
get
for
you.
people, and I think that kind of idea is kind of like, okay, yeah, let's. I think as a young child, seeing the Doctor always try and give people a chance and try and help them, I think it did have an impact, and I do think it's one of them cases where, despite them being made explicitly for just young children, I think young children who could deal with the scary monsters actually got taught a lot of good life lessons from that show.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's more things of good to relate to from the Doctor and Doctor Who. I think, there's bits of probably Rick and characters in Rick and Morty, but like, there's parts that you can probably relate to and shit that he's gone through as a character that they've tried to show off more. I feel as the show went on, tried to develop his character more than just this crazy scientist.
They established early he was a crazy scientist who was an unbearable arse, and then you kind of see what he's gone through. And there are parts of that are relatable, but it's almost relatable in the sense of, people go through shit, doesn't give you the excuse to be an arsehole. And I think that's also a good message to take away.
Yeah.
So I'd say the Doctor's more relatable, but they both have definitely got elements of relatability.
Yeah, I would agree.
Personal preference.
I don't think
at one point in my life, I had 13 TARDISes on a shelf.
It's a lot of storage space to have 13 of those.
Stacked inside each other like Russian nesting dolls.
Like
infinite backpack glitch. Yeah.
So what you're telling me is you're a landlord. I mean, although I haven't really watched much Doctor Who, out of these two, like I would pick David Tennant's Doctor over anything Rick and Morty. Yeah. Like,
bearing in mind that this is talking about pop culture at its core.
Yeah.
I don't think people our age growing up in Britain can think of anything more pop cultural than David Tennant as the Doctor.
Exactly.
Like, what a moment to have lived through.
Really was,
That's
actually.
crazy. Like... Yeah. Well, you actually deep it. Like, that was an incredible thing to have, like, been around and seen. Because I genuinely think in 30, 40 years, when the next two generations of people go back and watch Doctor Who, and they get to experience David Tennant's stint, they're going to be like, wow, that was real. Like, people our age going back to watch, like, Tom Baker, who was my dad's generation's version of David Tennant. A lot of people go back and they're like, wow, he was really good. I still prefer my one, obviously.
Yeah.
But no, I get why you guys loved him. And I think the exact same thing's going to happen. It's craziness.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact about David Tennant.
Go on.
His wife.
Mm-hmm.
He met on the set of Doctor Who.
Of course.
Filming an episode called The Doctor's Daughter, in which she played the Doctor's daughter. And she is the daughter of Pete Davidson, who played the Doctor.
That's wild. That is wild.
How fucking funny is that?
Also a bit funny that he started dating his daughter in the show.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
But let's top the scores.
So, iconicness, I think, went Doctor.
Yeah, I would have to say so.
Individuality went Doctor.
Yeah, easily.
Quality, Doctor.
Yep.
Legacy, Doctor.
By far, yep.
Relatability, Doctor.
Yep.
Personal preference, Doctor.
Yep. You kind of gave it to Rick Sanchez. He just absolutely just got destroyed.
Yeah, I think I accidentally fell into a trap going, these are similar-ish characters in their adventures with their companions.
One is several years old.
Doctor's been around for so long.
Yeah. Unfortunately, age has destroyed youth here.
Yeah. Experience being an adventurer will do that to
Yeah, you've basically put like a level 20 versus a level 3.
Yeah, for real. But that is it from us this week.
Yes.
Join us next week for another episode of Pop Culture Powerhouses. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe. Suggest down below who you'd like to see us battle off in the pop culture kingdom. And we'll catch you next time.
See you next time.